Intimacy. It's supposed to feel fulfilling, right? Yet more and more women are waking up to a quiet truth, something they weren't taught to notice. They feel drained, not energized. They feel pulled, not connected. And it happens quietly, almost imperceptibly, until one day they realize that what they once sought in closeness, in connection, in partnership, is no longer enough. Why does this happen? What changes inside a woman that leaves her longing for something she can't even name? Carl Jung, the father of depth psychology, might call it an awakening of the unconscious, a shift where energy no longer flows outward to please, to perform, to appease, but starts returning inward, demanding recognition, demanding presence. This isn't about blame, it isn't about failure, it's about transformation. A woman begins to notice the fatigue, the subtle emptiness after moments meant to bring pleasure, meant to bring union. And yet it is in this very exhaustion that something remarkable stirs. Jung would say that every energy denied eventually seeks expression. And when the outward drive for connection begins to feel heavy, it's not a rejection of life or love, it's a redirection. The soul is asking to be heard. Have you ever wondered why so many women report feeling mysteriously disconnected from relationships, even when everything seems perfect on the outside? That lingering tiredness, that invisible resistance, that feeling that something more important is calling. That is the soul whispering. And the journey we are about to explore is not just about why a woman feels drained by intimacy. It is about why, deep inside, this shift is a necessary part of her growth, a necessary part of reclaiming energy that was scattered, diverted, or misunderstood. In the next moments, we will dive into this journey, inspired by Jungian psychology, to understand the inner dynamics that make a woman withdraw from superficial connection, what she gains when she listens, and why this awakening, though challenging, can ultimately make her more alive than ever before.
And as she begins to notice, she realizes that the world has conditioned her to give energy endlessly, to perform, to fit into roles carefully prescribed by culture, by expectation, by the gaze of others. Jung described this as the persona, the mask we wear to belong, to be accepted, to be desired. And the more a woman has lived under these masks, the more her energy is siphoned outward. She gives in ways she barely notices, until one day the giving feels heavy, mechanical, hollow. And it is in that very hollowness that awareness begins to stir. This is when the shift begins. Not in a dramatic act, not in a rebellion, but quietly, in the moments when she stops performing, when she refuses to overextend for validation, when she pauses before giving herself away emotionally, physically, or energetically. Jung would call this a meeting with the shadow, the unrecognized, unintegrated parts of the psyche demanding attention. Here, she faces the question, who am I when I am not pleasing? What remains if I stop seeking affirmation through connection? It is uncomfortable, even frightening. Old patterns of desire, attachment, and need start to feel insufficient. The same interactions that once thrilled or reassured now feel flat, even empty. And that emptiness is not a void to fear. It is a signal, a marker that something inside is realigning. The energy that once flowed outward in search of approval is returning. Slowly, subtly, she begins to cultivate a sense of self not measured by how much she gives or how much she is wanted, but by how deeply she can inhabit her own presence. At first, she may doubt herself. She may wonder if something is wrong. She may fear that she is losing something essential. Jung taught that the ego often panics when the soul begins to take the lead. What feels like loss is, in fact, a reclamation. What feels like disinterest is actually a deepening, a prioritization of inner life over superficial connection. And as she listens to this internal voice, she begins to notice patterns she never recognized, the cycles of seeking, the energy wasted on shallow approval, the subtle exhaustion that came from overextending to fit expectations. This is not withdrawal in the sense of defeat or avoidance. It is transmutation. Energy once scattered, once surrendered to endless performance, begins to gather, settle, and crystallize. Jung would say that this is the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming whole, of integrating the parts of the psyche that were neglected, suppressed, or dismissed. And in that integration, a woman finds that what she thought she needed outside, attention, validation, constant closeness, is no longer urgent. It has been replaced by something stronger, more enduring, a recognition of her own inner vitality.
It is in this quiet tension that a woman begins to notice the subtle shifts within herself. The energy that once poured outward, seeking affirmation and connection, now pauses. She notices how her body responds differently, how her mind hesitates where it once rushed, how her emotions no longer demand external validation. And yet, this pause is not a void, it is a threshold. Jung would call it a threshold between the ego and the deeper self, where the unconscious whispers truths that the daily noise had drowned out. She may feel conflicted. On one hand, there is guilt, the cultural echo that she must always be available, always responsive, always nurturing. On the other hand, there is a strange liberation, a quiet curiosity that asks, what if I don't need to perform? What if I simply exist? And it is in asking these questions without rushing toward answers that the first sparks of self-awareness ignite. Intimacy, as she once knew it, begins to feel incomplete, not because she has lost desire, but because desire itself is changing shape. It is no longer a compulsion directed outward, but a call inward. The connection she seeks is no longer external, it is internal. Jung's psychology reminds us that repressed energy does not disappear, it transforms. And the energy of desire, once scattered in pursuit of approval, now seeks the contours of the self. She may begin to experience moments of discomfort, almost imperceptible at first, a hesitation before entering old patterns, a quiet resistance to familiar rituals. And when these moments accumulate, they form a boundary, a soft but unmistakable line between what was expected of her and what she is beginning to demand for herself. She is learning, sometimes without knowing it, to honor the interior life, to prioritize presence over performance, depth over immediacy. And here is where the paradox appears. Withdrawal does not mean absence. Stepping back from superficial closeness does not mean rejecting love. It means redefining it. It means reclaiming the energy that once flowed outward and letting it circulate inward. Jung would describe this as the early stages of individuation, the process by which a woman begins to recognize herself as a complete autonomous being, separate from projections and expectations imposed by others. It is not always comfortable. Moments of solitude can feel heavy. Longings can emerge for what is familiar, for the warmth of connection, for the reassurance of being needed. Yet these feelings are signals, not failures. They mark the negotiation between the old patterns and the emerging self. Each hesitation, each inner question, each moment of doubt is part of the journey toward clarity. The awakening is subtle, yet undeniable.
The body that once sought constant engagement now rests in quiet attention. The mind that once chased approval now lingers in reflection. The soul, long unheard, begins to speak. And when she listens, truly listens, she discovers a truth that cannot be taught, that her own presence, fully felt and honored, is more potent than any external validation. This is not a path prescribed by society. It is not measured by popularity, by the approval of others, or by performance in the world of expectations. It is a personal evolution, a reclamation of energy, a rediscovery of what Jung might call the autonomous spirit. It is here, in the silence of unmet expectations and unmet desires, that a woman begins to reconnect with herself, her instincts, her intuition, and the deeper currents of her being. And so she continues, quietly, patiently, with a growing awareness that what she once sought outside now lies within. What was once restlessness becomes curiosity. What was once distraction becomes attention. And in this transformation, she begins to glimpse the power of a life lived from the interior, a life guided by presence, by depth, by the subtle but unwavering pulse of her own soul.
As she continues on this path, the world outside may begin to feel unfamiliar. Friends, partners, even family may not understand the shift. They see only what is visible, the withdrawal, the quiet, the change in patterns, but they cannot see the inner transformation, the subtle reorientation of energy, the awakening that unfolds silently within. And this is precisely why the journey can feel isolating. Yet isolation here is not emptiness. It is a necessary container for growth. Jung would remind us that the unconscious speaks in symbols, in dreams, in the quiet stirrings that we often overlook. A woman may notice her dreams becoming more vivid, her intuition sharper, her reflections deeper. She may sense that her inner life has expanded, even as her outward engagements feel smaller. And this is not a rejection of the world. It is an alignment with something more authentic within herself. It is in these moments of pause that she begins to see patterns she had not noticed before. Old habits, repetitive choices, the ways in which she gave herself to others at the expense of herself. The energy that once flowed outward for validation now returns, illuminating the blind spots of her inner world. She begins to understand that desire, when untamed and unexamined, often masks a deeper longing, the longing to be recognized, not by others, but by oneself. And here lies the subtle paradox. As she steps back from familiar forms of connection, she may encounter discomfort, a feeling of dissonance, a questioning of her own choices. Am I doing something wrong? Am I losing touch? These are the echoes of societal conditioning, the voices that insist a woman must always be available, always responsive, always performing. But she begins to recognize them for what they are, external pressures, not truths. By consciously attending to this tension, she cultivates a space where the soul can speak. Jung would call this an encounter with the self, a confrontation with what he termed the shadow, the repressed, the denied, the unacknowledged aspects of her being. And in facing these shadows, she begins to reclaim fragments of herself that had been scattered across relationships, expectations, and obligations. The transformation is gradual, almost imperceptible at first. She notices a subtle shift in how she experiences pleasure, intimacy, and closeness. She may find herself less driven by the need for external affirmation and more attuned to her own rhythms, her own desires, her own presence. The body, once a vehicle for performance, now becomes a temple for self-awareness. And it is here, in this internal realignment, that she discovers a new kind of freedom, a freedom that is neither frantic nor loud, but steady,
grounded, and profoundly alive. It is not an easy process. Temptations, distractions, and old patterns will surface repeatedly. Invitations, both subtle and overt, may challenge the boundaries she is learning to hold. And yet, every time she pauses, every time she chooses reflection over reaction, she strengthens her capacity to honor herself. Each act of conscious attention becomes a rehearsal for a life lived from presence rather than obligation. Jung emphasized that growth requires courage, the courage to face the unknown within oneself. This courage is often accompanied by discomfort, by uncertainty, by what feels like loss. And yet the loss is only apparent. What seems like withdrawal is actually an accumulation of self-possession. What seems like absence is the creation of space for deeper, more authentic engagement with life. And so she moves forward, quietly, patiently, attentively. Each choice, each hesitation, each conscious act builds upon the last. She learns that true intimacy, the kind that nourishes rather than drains, cannot be found outside without first being discovered within. The body, the mind, and the soul are finally aligned, not for performance, not for validation, but for recognition of herself in her wholeness, in her autonomy, in her growing power.
And then comes the subtle yet profound realization. The energy she once invested to meet expectations, to elicit desire, to perform intimacy, is no longer necessary in the same way. She begins to recognize that her vitality is not diminished by abstaining from what she once sought compulsively. Instead, it is redirected, refined, and concentrated. Jung would describe this as a form of psychic alchemy, where energy once dispersed in the external world is reclaimed and transformed into self-possession. She notices a new clarity emerging in her choices. The relationships she once tolerated out of fear of loneliness now feel unnecessary. She no longer moves through the world with the same hunger for validation. The subtle anxieties that once accompanied desire, the worry of being liked, of being chosen, of being enough, begin to fade. In their place arises a grounded awareness, the recognition that her worth is inherent and that fulfillment cannot be granted externally. And yet, this is not a state of withdrawal from life. It is a conscious immersion in presence. She is more attentive, more sensitive, more aligned. Her laughter, her curiosity, her engagement with the world is no longer performative. It is real, it is vivid, it is unapologetically hers. And with this shift, something extraordinary happens. People respond differently. Those who had known her superficially now sense depth. Those who sought to manipulate, control, or distract no longer find the same openings. And those rare souls who are attuned to authenticity begin to resonate with her energy on a new frequency. She may encounter skepticism or misunderstanding from others. Questions arise. Why are you changing? Why don't you want what everyone else wants? Are you denying yourself? But she understands that these questions are not about her. They are reflections of other people's conditioning, their discomfort with a woman who no longer conforms to the scripts imposed upon her. And she begins to hold her ground, calmly, without explanation, without apology. Jung would point out that individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, requires such steadfastness. It requires enduring the friction between one's inner truth and outer expectation. It requires listening to the whispers of the unconscious, even when they contradict societal norms. And in this space, she discovers an unexpected joy, the joy of being fully seen by herself, the joy of aligning action with essence, the joy of inhabiting her own life without compromise. She starts noticing subtle shifts in her relationships with others. Interactions that once felt transactional now carry a new weight. Conversations are richer, not because of words, but because of presence. The energy she brings is no longer scattered, it is intentional, grounded, and resonant.
And in this resonance, she attracts experiences and connections that reflect her newfound alignment. This transformation is deeply psychological. Jung described the unconscious as a reservoir of untapped wisdom, symbols, and energy. When a woman learns to listen to this inner landscape, she accesses insights that were previously unavailable. She begins to see patterns in her life, understand motivations that once felt mysterious, and recognize recurring cycles that have shaped her experiences. And through this recognition, she gains mastery, not over others, but over herself. It is in these moments that she realizes desire is not a deficit, intimacy is not a requirement for wholeness, validation is not a measure of value. Instead, what matters is presence, awareness, and alignment. And as she integrates this understanding, she discovers a freedom that cannot be taken away, a freedom that is quiet, steady, and profoundly transformative.
And as this transformation deepens, she begins to notice another subtle shift. Her own body feels different. Not because it has changed physically, but because her awareness of it has. Every sensation, every impulse, every fleeting desire is observed without judgment, without compulsion. Jung would describe this as a dialogue between the conscious mind and the somatic unconscious. The body is no longer a vessel of automatic reaction. It becomes a messenger, a teacher, a guide. She feels more attuned to her rhythms, her energy cycles, and her boundaries. She notices what brings her vitality and what drains it. The moments that once demanded performance now feel optional. The pressure to please has lifted, and in this liberation, she discovers the extraordinary power of choice. Every interaction, every gesture, every engagement is now infused with intention rather than obligation. Yet this journey is not always gentle. Moments of doubt and discomfort arise because letting go of habitual desires can feel like loss. There is a tension between the familiar and the unknown, between the comfort of old patterns and the promise of inner alignment. And it is in facing this tension without fleeing that true growth occurs. Jung would call this encountering the shadow, the parts of the self that have been repressed, denied, or misunderstood. And when she meets these shadowed aspects with courage and compassion, she integrates them, reclaiming energy that was once lost to unconscious repetition. With integration comes empowerment. She no longer measures herself against external expectations or societal pressures. The judgments, comparisons, and subtle manipulations that once shaped her choices now slide off with ease. Her presence becomes magnetic, not because she demands attention, but because she carries a quiet, unshakable authority. And this authority is not about dominance or control. It is about alignment, clarity, and authenticity. In this state, relationships transform naturally. She does not seek intimacy to fill a void or validate her existence. Connection arises from resonance, mutual respect, and conscious choice. She can engage fully or step back without guilt. She can say yes without anxiety and no without fear. And with each conscious choice, her inner world becomes more coherent, more harmonious, more alive. Jung's teachings remind us that consciousness expands when energy is reclaimed from unconscious compulsions. What once flowed outward to please, impress, or gain approval now circulates inward, nurturing self-awareness, self-respect, and creativity. The woman who learns to listen to her own unconscious becomes her own authority. She discovers that she has always had access to guidance, insight, and wisdom. It was merely buried beneath layers of distraction, habit, and conditioned desire. And in this reclamation, she notices something remarkable. Life itself feels richer. Experiences are not measured by intensity or quantity, but by resonance and presence. Moments of stillness, reflection, or solitude are no longer empty. They are filled with insight, self-knowledge, and depth. She becomes fluent in her own inner language, able to navigate her emotions, desires, and impulses with skill and discernment. Ultimately, she understands that what she once sought outside, attention, validation, pleasure, was never the source of fulfillment. True vitality arises from within. The external world may offer experiences, but they no longer define her. And as she walks this path, she carries a quiet certainty. She is complete, whole, and aligned, not because anyone told her she should be, but because she has consciously chosen to be. And now she begins to notice the most profound change of all. Her presence is no longer fragmented, scattered across attempts to please, to be noticed, or to gain approval. Every choice, every glance, every step is measured not by fear or habit, but by resonance and alignment with her own inner truth. Jung would say she has entered a state of individuation, a conscious integration of shadow and self, body and soul, desire and awareness. The world may still push expectations, old narratives, and subtle pressures, but they no longer dictate her responses. She can participate fully or step back gracefully. She can feel deeply, yet remain grounded. And in this balance, she discovers a freedom that is unshakable, a clarity that cannot be manipulated, and a light that draws only what belongs in her space. This is not isolation. It is a deeper communion with herself, with her energy, with the pulse of life itself. She no longer needs external validation because she has cultivated the most important relationship of all, the relationship with her own being. In this silence, in this conscious withdrawal from compulsive desire, she finds nourishment, not a fleeting satisfaction, but a lasting vitality. Every past interaction that felt draining, every pattern that led to frustration, every connection that required her to shrink, these now serve as markers on her journey. They are no longer regrets, they are lessons, signposts, and fuel for wisdom. Jung would describe this as the transformation of psychic energy. What once scattered and unconscious is now focused, intentional, and life-giving. She also notices the subtle ripple effect this has on the world around her. Relationships shift, dynamics change. People respond differently, not because she demands it, but because she carries presence. She does not force attention or compliance. She simply embodies her integrated self, and that presence cannot be ignored. And here is the final truth. This shift is not a denial of intimacy, nor a rejection of connection. It is a reclamation of power, choice, and authenticity. The woman who learns to listen, who honors her energy, who integrates shadow and soul, does not need to perform, please, or chase. She lives from a space of abundance, where connection arises naturally and consciously, rather than out of habit or lack. Her desire is no longer urgent, frantic, or reactive. It is intentional, sacred, and aligned. She experiences pleasure and connection not as a means to fill emptiness, but as a natural expression of her wholeness. And the world sees her differently, not because she has changed to impress, but because she has become fully herself. Carl Jung reminds us that the journey inward is not easy, but it is transformative. The woman who embraces this path discovers her energy is no longer at the mercy of external forces. She becomes her own anchor, her own authority, and her own source of vitality. And in that realization, she understands what she once sought outside, validation, approval, fleeting pleasure, is no longer necessary. She is complete, whole, and present. The final awakening is subtle yet profound. Every day becomes a conscious choice, every interaction a reflection of alignment, every sensation a dialogue between body, mind, and soul. She moves through life not in pursuit, but in presence, and that, ultimately, is the freedom, the power, and the fulfillment she has been seeking all along. This is the woman who has stopped allowing external expectations to define her desire, her energy, or her joy. This is the woman who has reclaimed herself. And in that reclamation, she discovers a life that is more vivid, more meaningful, and more alive than she ever imagined.